Hello and welcome to Shaka Extra Time. It's another exciting week ahead of us. I'm here with Shaka Sali, aka the Kabale Kid. Hello, Shaka.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
Hugely terrific.
We had an exciting week last week. I hope this week is even going to be better.
It's probably even much better than last week because at least we are sure, at least for now, unless something hugely, incredibly terrible happens, there should be at least a team from the continent, frankly, that moves into the next round.
Well, a warm welcome to you all our Facebook followers and Twitter followers watching us live. Shaka Extra Time is a place where you get to talk to Shaka himself and ask some questions. Right away, let's go to the World Cup. African teams have had a remarkable start so far. We have countries that have done very well and countries that are still that are technically out of the competition. We are talking about Egypt, we are talking about Tunisia. They're out of the competition, but we still have Nigeria in play. They're likely to play Argentina this afternoon. We have Senegal. Senegal has been doing miracles. Your thoughts?
Well, Senegal could probably have really done a miracle if, in fact, it had sustained its lead on, was it Spain?
Yes.
But unfortunately, they ended up drawing 2-2, so it's anybody's guess. But I think they are looking very, very good. And of course, the Nigerians are going to be meeting with Argentina, with Messi and what have you, later today. And let's face it, the history doesn't particularly look good in terms of Nigeria vis-a-vis Argentina, because they have met 4 times, and 4 times they have come short. But this time, it could actually be a game that makes history. Because let's face it, a lot of people may not know, but the fact is that Nigeria, in fact, has at one time beaten Argentina in a game that mattered, and that was the finals of the Olympic Games in 1996 in Atlanta. They beat Argentina and took the gold medal. Along the way, they had in fact also beaten, guess what? Brazil.
Interesting. You know, every time I see Argentina, it reminds me of the young Maradona, Diego Maradona. And now Messi. Messi has had a rough start, but he's arguably the #2 soccer player in the world. So I'm waiting to see how he plays this evening.
After who? After Ronaldo?
Yes.
What about Neymar, the Brazilian African diaspora type of guy?
Yeah, he's also one of the top football players.
And Paul, you know, I should point out really that people talk about Africa and they say Africa is missing in action, simply because the continent is not probably doing as much as it should or it ought to do. But let's face it, you have the African diaspora doing incredible work. For those who may not know, again, we walk back in memory lane to 1998 in the Stade de France in Paris. The French national team winning the World Cup final for the first time ever. And guess what? Most of the players, including the guy called Zidane, who scored 2 out of the 3 against Brazil. His parents came from Algeria back in 1953. You had Thierry Henry himself, whose parents, one come from Guadeloupe, another one from Martinique. Thierry Henry. He's a Mchiga man.
Interesting. You know, Shaka, it looks like this time around, the big teams are not doing as well as we expected. You look at countries like Argentina, you look at countries like Brazil, Germany was almost kicked out. You look at countries like Uruguay, that's a small country, is now like leading with 9 points. Then you have, of course, Russia, the host, which is doing very, very well. And all the other, France, Croatia, Mexico, England, these are countries that were considered to be, at least by a lot of analysts to be pushing for the championship.
I think you're right, especially when you look at Germany, and you remember 4 years ago, essentially they caused some kind of Brazilian massacre, really, when they beat Brazil at home in Brazil, 7-1. And they're probably paying for that. I mean, let's face it, no team, by the way, however good or great actually it is, has actually won the World Cup back-to-back since 1970, when Brazil actually last did it, having had, not 1970 actually, 1962, having initially won it for the first time in 1958. So no team actually, since then, from what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, no team has actually won it back-to-back. And so probably the Germans are actually carrying a monkey on their back.
Interesting. A lot of my Nigerian friends are anxious. They're waiting for this match, Nigeria versus Argentina. Any predictions?
To be honest with you, I would like to see the Green Eagles really for the first time, you know, kind of like remove the monkey off their back vis-a-vis Argentina and move to the second round. And who knows, it could probably happen.
Well, let's move along. Let's now talk about peace, or if there is any peace to keep, like you already say, let's go to South Sudan. My reporting, or the reporting that I've seen online this far, says there was no deal reached in Khartoum by the two warring parties, President Salva Kiir and his main rival, Riek Machar. Of course, you had the president of Uganda and the president of Sudan trying to mediate those talks. Bring us up to speed, Shaka.
It is very interesting. Of course, I was looking at today's edition of the East African, and you have this beautiful picture of the four men. You're talking about, of course, in addition to the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, and the host, of course, Marshal al-Bashir. You're also talking about the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir Mayardit, and you talk about Dr. Riek Machar. They have beautiful picture, really. But this was before they actually even began the talks. But the fact that they are even talking, by the way, is very, very significant, because let's face it, when you're talking about peace, peace is neither an incident nor an event. It is a process. And I'm glad that finally the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir Mayardit, has at least really given peace a chance, because let's face it, we keep talking each week, Paul, that people are doing the dying in South Sudan. People are starving. People are refugees in their own country and in the countries surrounding their country. These guys have to figure out a way of putting aside their selfish interests and make sure that they agree on giving a chance to their own people. I mean, let's face it. You know, you do not actually make peace with a friend. You make peace with an adversary, with your enemy. And I think Salva Kiir, the sooner he recognizes that, the better. And this really should not just be, you know, talking the talk and, you know, signing a piece of paper that you don't believe in. They should actually go for it, because time is running out, man. It's simply too much. But again, to expect that these guys meet in Khartoum and, you know, sign a piece of document and what have you, probably is expecting too much, really. Because let's face it, these guys have not met in the last 2 years. These guys, each time they have met, there is the issue or the deficit of trust. And even if you're trusted, there is a great American president that once said, trust but verify. How is it going to be verified if, in fact, they agree on the modalities of going forward towards the peace? There should be guarantees, probably, provided by the IGAD plus, the Troika. The same Troika, by the way, that guaranteed the comprehensive peace agreement between the SPLA, and the government of Khartoum, of Sudan, back in 2005. That's really what we need to have.
Shaka, what do you make of the argument that maybe there is no peace to keep? So many people have died, and these leaders just keep talking about a peace process, a peace talks, and nothing yields. Maybe I could also tie that into a Facebook comment from Biret Shiferwa. Shaka, don't you think foreign interference, especially from Western countries, make it difficult to bring peace in South Sudan? I can also maybe add in the context of Uganda. Uganda is trying to play the role of a mediator, but it actually is taking a side. Your thoughts?
Uganda is definitely playing a very partisan role. There's no question about it. There's no question about, no doubt about who it supports, who it would like to be, to continue being president in Juba. It is Salva Kiir Mayardit. Perhaps because someone used to tell me, when it comes to power, people look at somebody who is quote-unquote malleable. It's quite possible that the Ugandan president looks at Salva Kiir as somebody who is malleable and therefore can actually control. Whereas if he looks at Dr. Riek Machar, who happens to have a PhD and other couple of degrees in engineering and what have you and stuff like that, who is remarkably sophisticated, who knows what happens in the international, the international community, how plays are, how dynamics are done and what have you, then he probably, develops some cold feet. He probably thinks that that is a sort of intellectual equal, if not superior, and therefore doesn't probably feel comfortable really with him. But these are dynamics of power. But then there are also reports that, the president of Sudan, al-Bashir, also happens to favor, or at least to back, Dr. Riek Machar. So I think sometimes you need something very different. Because if you talk about the kind of negotiations they are going through, someone might tell you that you are probably looking at a couple planning a marriage while concentrating on divorce. This has actually happened not once, but twice. So probably people may think about what some have suggested, that maybe, just maybe, remove these two principles out of the interim government. And I'm talking about President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. Remove them out of these interim arrangements. Bring two other individuals to hold the fort so that these guys can actually eventually go and sell their messages among their people so that they surface when it is time for elections. This is something that probably actually could make a very big difference. But let's face it, these individuals, they have supporters, they have hunger zone, they have people who benefit out of them. These people, they still are committed, they are still very sycophantic, very supportive of the individuals they support. So it's not a very easy thing to do, but I think ultimately something has to be done, at least sincerely, in the interest of the ordinary South Sudanese citizen.
You are watching Shaka Extra Time. We are streaming live both on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to tweet us, you can tweet us at Shaka Extra Time. And Shaka, before that, let's go back again to the peace talks in Ethiopia and Eritrea. As of today, for the first time in almost 20 years, you had a delegation sent from Eritrea to come and meet the new Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, there. Very significant in the sense that these two countries have been at it for a very long time. Your thoughts?
Very significant step in the right direction because keeping in mind that these two countries, first of all, they broke diplomatic relationships back in 1998. They fought for some years, my friend, and eventually both countries probably lost in the neighborhoods of between 80 and 100,000 people. We're talking about soldiers, really, fighting for this very small neighborhood trading center, if you will, called Badme. Population 15,000, according to some estimates. And these people are brothers, by the way. I mean, let's face it, when you talk about Eritrea and Ethiopia or Abyssinia, the ancient kingdom, they are really brothers. The fact that this new man, Abiy Ahmed, has come up and worked his magic, to be very honest with you, he looks like someone. Someone that when the Clinton administration coined some kind of word or baptized the new leaders in Africa, we're talking about Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, we're talking about then Meles Zenawi of Ethiopia, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and to a certain degree also at the time, Laurent Desire Kabila. They called them a new breed of African leaders, the beacons of hope for African democracy. They turn out to be like a new breed, in fact, of African dictatorship. It's quite possible that Abiy Ahmed probably reflects and represents that. It's quite possible. We don't know. Time will tell. But he increasingly looks like the guy, sincerely, that can do it. So far, he hasn't disappointed a lot of people, except those who supported the status quo, and especially those from Tigray, who form about 6% of the population of Ethiopia, which is more than 105 million human beings.
Shaka, I hope at some point you don't take that word back, saying that is a reflection of quote unquote what Africa is looking for. I will take you up on that at some point, but
mind you, I said possibly. So I think there is some kind of room for maneuver, some kind of you could say there is some sort of plausibility for being wrong.
I mean, he's only been in power for less than 4 months, so I think he's rushing.
But he has done incredible things to the extent that, in fact, people who are threatened tried to take him out. On Saturday, June 23rd, they tried to take him out. And he was safe, and among the people who are suspected to actually have tried to do it is a senior deputy commissioner of the police of Addis Ababa, the capital.
Interesting. There was also an assassination attempt in Zimbabwe.
Yes, that is correct.
And, they almost wiped out the entire leadership of the country.
That is very true, and it is very interesting to note that whereas in Addis Ababa, at least, they have already arrested, they have some suspects who are arrested, and in fact, yesterday, there are some people who appeared in court. In Zimbabwe, it doesn't look like they have actually been able to identify any suspects so far. But then again, when you think about where it actually happened, you're talking about Bulawayo, which is the capital of the ancient kingdom of that area called King Rubengula. You're talking about the Matebele land, where the government of President Robert Mugabe, back in 1983, reportedly may have in fact been responsible for killing, some have said even genocide, of more than 20,000 human beings. And it is also suggested that at that time, the incumbent president of Zimbabwe, who some call the crocodile, at that time happened to be the president of security, which involved intelligence and what have you, and all kind of stuff. So it's not really probably the type of very hospitable or environmentally friendly territory probably for the new leaders in Zimbabwe.
Shaka, let's talk about something important here. We have a Facebook comment from, he says, last week you talked about term limits for African leaders, and one of your followers, A.Y. Yorakam, says, we need to impose term limits for you on your show too, Shaka. I think I would like to host it now. Your term ends in December. Please, what do you think Shaka should do?
Well, I think you have a very good point, especially given that you do have some personal interests here. You obviously would like to have an opportunity to be on the platform and host Straight Talk Africa, and why not? All you have to do is look for, since you know what you want right now, what you do right now, I would say, look for the appropriate tools. Look for the appropriate tools so that you can navigate your way to making sure that someday you host Straight Talk Africa. But unfortunately, as of now, even though you may perceive Shaka as a public official, Shaka is not a public official. Shaka did not run for office. And Shaka does not have that type of constitution that imposes those types of limits. I can assure you that if Shaka was one of those people that was voted into Straight Talk Africa, and they said he would host it for 10 years or 15 or 20, Shaka would basically honor, you know, those constitutions, those types of laws and what have you. But what I can say, my friend, that is for public officials who go out there, say their message, and promise heaven on earth. They promise heaven on earth because some say when people campaign, they campaign in poetry. So they pretty much say anything that goes, that they think that can be bought in order for them to get where they get. But when they get the opportunity to get into the business of governing, they do that one in prose.
There is a quick follow-up here. How about the possibility of having a female anchor maybe take over when you decide to relinquish your term limits?
First of all, to be honest with you, when I got the opportunity to host Straight Talk Africa, I basically requested for it. I requested for it, and I went through the kind of you know, things that you have to go through in order for the managers to have a vote of confidence in your ability to be able to do it. I think it will be a very good thing, obviously, to have a female hosting Straight Talk Africa. And for those females that are out there who only think that they have what it takes to do it, why not? I should also tell them that what they need is simply look for the appropriate tools that they need in order to navigate their way to the platform of Straight Talk Africa.
What are you talking about tomorrow on Straight Talk Africa?
Tomorrow we are actually looking at some very interesting issues. We're looking at women empowerment, and we are also at the same time looking at what they call decentralization systems of government so as to provide services or take services closer to the people. We're talking about service delivery, and we're also looking at it in the context of democracy, whether in fact service delivery and, for example, democracy or the issues of civil liberties, in a sense, are mutually exclusive. In fact, they are not, you know, they are basically mutually reinforcing. They're not mutually exclusive. So when somebody provides unfettered access to you in terms of health care, in terms of education, in terms of those types of things that sustain life, do not think that that person is doing you a favor. Those are your rights.
Let's go back to South Sudan. Hello, a comment from Luke Okwi Oyet. Hello, Voice of America. Removing President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar is not a solution to our political disasters. Our country needs to call for truth and real reconciliation. Your thoughts?
Well, remember I had also touched on that there are obviously some people who very strongly believe in the leaders that they follow. And therefore, they are not going to even, even for a second sincerely, consider the possibility of these people stepping aside for a while. Yes, you can bring about the issue of, essentially like what happened maybe in South Africa, truth, justice and reconciliation and what have you. But in order for you to do that, first of all, really, you have to stop the guns. You have to stop these two people to continue engaging in the business of killing people, killing their own people. Because if you kill people, who are you going to govern? So I think that the key here really is to stop the guns, is to agree that yes, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, these two individuals may not love each other, and they are not in fact required to love each other. They may not like each other, but the fact of the matter is, sincerely, circumstances have condemned them to live together in one country, and they have to think about the responsibility that is incumbent upon them to give a break to the people of South Sudan who really have been doing the dying since 2013 up to now.
Shaka, the question of term limits seems to be generating a buzz here. Let's go to Nicholas Turinabo in Kigali, Rwanda. What will happen to African leaders who keep changing the constitutions? I'm particularly talking about my country.
Well, first of all, I think that it is incumbent upon Turinawe and his colleagues to essentially put their feet on the ground, answer the call of citizenship, so that they can make it very difficult, if not impossible, for some individuals to impose themselves on them. Experience has shown, and history also will probably, bear me out, that in countries where an individual has stayed almost longest, and we're talking about people like Gaddafi, we're talking about people like Mobutu Sese Seko Wazabanga, we can talk about a lot of other people who have stayed longer, ruled undemocratically. The legacy they have left behind is the sort of things we are talking about in South Sudan. People dying, doing the dying, rather than people figuring out a way of developing themselves, developing their countries. Because look at a country like the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo was under the dictatorship, despotism of Mobutu Seko Wazabanga for 32 years.
Kabila says he has brought them democracy.
Well, I don't know how that democracy looks like, but the fact of the matter is Congolese should not be in the business of being poor. They should not be in the business of sleeping on an empty stomach. This is arguably one of the richest countries in the world, not just Africa. One of the richest countries in the world. You're talking about Colton. You're looking at this iPhone. That iPhone will not be there without coltan from the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Shaka, unfortunately, we have to end it there. Thank you so much for watching us live here in Washington. I look forward to hosting you on another edition of Shaka Extra Time. Until then, thank you so much, and so long from Washington.